everyone, welcome back to the CollabCast. I'm editor Katie Cusack, and I'm here with Patrick White, an actor, director, and theater educator in local theater, and obviously very involved in the local community. You've been around for a while. Just to start, I wanted to ask, what was your initial entrance into theater? When did you know that it was for you?
I was a high school clown, anything for attention, and I guess I was having difficulties with my parents, as high schoolers do, and we were reading Glass Menagerie in English class, and I volunteered to play Tom for, I think it was like 2 or 3 days in a row, and the fights he had with his mother, and I got to read this awesome play, and I got all this great feedback. People said, "Oh, man, you were really good." And I was like,
"Oh, okay."
Totally made sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah. And you are also a columnist for us, and that's, I guess, sort of building off of that, something that you've talked about in some of your columns is sort of how theater and plays reflect our daily life and our culture. And I don't know, are there some local productions that you've been a part of over the years that have really spoken to, in your opinion, like our local culture in the theater community?
Well, what a question. I mean, when you started saying it, it's like I fell in love with my partner
Right.
auditioning for a show. There have been many shows. I mean, last year I directed 5 plays and I acted in 2. So, like, theater for me is such a part of my life. It marks, everything, but plays that speak to... we were just talking, I did a production of An Inspector Calls at Schenectady Civic Playhouse last January, and we were talking about Morgan Hayward and Illuminate, and I reached out and I was looking for diverse casting because the play is set in the Victorian era, and I was like, there's no reason why this needs to be an all-Caucasian cast. And so, but by reaching out to Illuminate, I turned out, and in the audition room, I had such a great turnout. I said, we could do this play with all actors of color. And so that, little move to make this inclusive turned into a concept for the play and, introduced me to all these actors that I've since worked with, that have since worked all over, and that have formed their own, companies and productions. J.R. Richards, Angelique Powell, Carmen Lookshire, amazing.
Yeah. Having been on the scene for a number of years, how have you seen the local theater community change and evolve in that way? Like you say, like new groups are forming.
Every year. There's I did a count, I don't know, a year ago or so, and there were over 60 groups.
Wow.
But every year there are new groups founding Troy Foundry Theater, Going Dark Productions. These are a couple in the past 2 years, Callaloo Theater Company. So yeah, it's no longer, there is a very strong community theater base where Albany Civic Theater, Schenectady Civic Playhouse, Schenectady Light Opera Company have been around 90 years. There's Capital Repertory Company, our Lord Equity Company, which has been around 35 years. So how has it changed? It keeps growing.
Yeah.
It keeps growing exponentially. And just when you think, there are too many, there are more happening. And I very rarely go to a show with, 5, 10 people in the audience. And even when, like, I did a production of Waiting for Godot, which had 7 people in the audience.
Wow.
And that kind of, like, kicked off my directing career because I was like, we can do better. Like, I can do better, promoting and getting people to come out and things like that.
Yeah.
So, I guess how has it changed? It's no longer tied to a specific building. People are performing all over the place. There are new performance spaces. There are
Yeah,
new
like shared spaces.
theaters. There's the Addy. There's Albany Barn. And then there are the non-traditional spaces, whether it's a site-specific work like Northeast Theater Ensemble doing Seagull at Maybe Farms, or Little Foxes, which was done at Ten Brook Mansion, or they're using Troy Atrium or the Freer Building to put shows on. So that's changed.
Yeah. When it comes to putting these shows together and going at it from a director standpoint of promoting the shows, how do you find is the best way to get audiences to really resonate with the play and like show up? Like,
I attend their plays.
Yeah. Connecting.
It's like attend unto others as you would have them attend unto you.
Right.
It's like my partner and I went to 275 shows last year.
Unreal.
It's showing up for others and they show up for you.
Yeah, building a community.
Right. And within that, there are groups that are not, affiliated with performing or like theater buffs, and they attend when they see all this cool stuff and the cool, great people supporting each other.
Right.
It just builds.
Yeah. It's like the basic ethos and like also in thinking of every genre of the arts, especially in the local community, seems to be like the same issue in a way of like, we'll go to your show, like you come to us, and then we build this community, and then like, we start to, and then even, just thinking in, all these little groups are forming, one might think maybe that's like separating everyone, but it's not. It's keeping, like everybody goes to each other's shows in a way. So it's like, how do we?
Right. And that is what has changed.
Right.
Where what I used to see 20 years ago when I started here were the silos.
Those structures.
And there's still a remnant of that. And
sure, yeah. It's a hard thing to break.
Yeah, well, and some people only have, it's very hard what we do.
Yeah.
To have a full-time job and then to go and, produce and then to attend, it's a life.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't want that to be completely your life. And that's totally understandable.
Yeah.
But that is what has changed, is that it continues to grow and people continue to support each other. And, and like you said, I'm sure it's the same for comedy, poetry, music.
Everybody.
Right? It's Albany or it's Capital Region.
Yeah.
It's like, we're not snobs. We have to show up for each other.
Yeah. And everybody feels drawn to perform constantly. I think that's another really interesting thing about artists around here is like it doesn't, small shows don't deter people from keeping up with their like art and with performances and with going to other shows.
Right.
We need it. It's like we need it for the region and our culture.
Right. Very exciting. It's like 7 people attending, waiting for Godot. It's a motivating factor. It's like, here's this great work, that has to be pushed and that has to get out there. And, it's a touchstone.
Yeah. And when it comes to, this growing community, whether it be in theater or other forms of the art, obviously, you're an educator, so you have experience teaching courses. Can you talk a little bit about what your classes are like and what kind of students you get? Like, are they usually new or are they sort of more experienced actors?
Yeah, all levels. A great, diverse cross-section of, people who are interested in theater, and they come through all different channels. Some of it are people who want a career. Some of it are, women that, maybe acted because they were roped into a daughter's production 30 years ago, and now, they want to continue, and they find joy in it.
Yeah.
live action role players are in my class.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had comedians. I've had, all
Yeah.
sorts of different aspects of performing, which is really cool.
Yeah.
It's not just, we're gearing towards a career in this. It's people who want to experience theater for the joy of it.
Right. And
Right.
the joy of performing.
And attending.
Yeah, exactly. What are some of the hardest things that some of your students have had to deal with just in sort of like getting to that stage presence, I guess, in sort of getting to the point where they're more comfortable becoming their role? Or
I think the hardest thing that they struggle with is memorization. And it's a bear. It's like I understand, if I was to sit down, and take a math class again,
Right.
it is just being alone with yourself and taking words off the page and saying them to yourself in an empty room. And I think, for me, it's like kind of embarrassing, even though you're alone. And it's like this,
Yeah.
it's hard work.
Yeah.
I always set up a task like washing my floor or something while I'm memorizing something. So it's
Wow.
well, at least I got that done. Maybe I got a paragraph learned.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably the hardest. Presence. None of my students have a problem with presence.
Yeah.
If you step up with the desire and say, I want to take an acting class, you got presence.
Yeah. You've got the determination
Yeah.
there just to sign up for it.
That spark and that just wanting to be on stage is enough to make an audience want to watch you.
What drew you to becoming an educator in theater?
I spent 13 years in the city trying to make a career of it, a profession. And when I came up here, tail kicked, beaten, I kind of had this feeling like I don't want to teach anyone and, lead them to something that's not going to pay off.
Right.
This bitter, young, whatever.
Right.
What led me to teaching was I ran into a guy going to a show, and I was like, "What's he doing here? Who do you know in this class?" And he mentioned her. And I'm like, "That doesn't make sense. How do you know these people?" Acting class.
Yeah.
And I saw acting class as a way of building the community and
Right.
building not just performers but an audience, and that's what it is. It's a community that I continue to nurture, and and by that it's I'm pretty mad about theater. It is something where I can go and just talk about exciting stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of different stories to be told, obviously, and that's why new plays pop up all the time, and there's always somebody writing something else. It's, forgot exactly what I was saying.
That's all right. We got a road trip going on this weekend. 4 of my students, all women, coincidentally, are going down to the city to see a double header. We're doing a 2 dossier of, by the way, meet Vera Stark and If Pretty Hurts, Ugly Must Be a Mother. And it's just because I go in and I talk about this stuff, and we have a play reading group that meets once a month and has brunch and talks about plays. And Vera Stark was like the first play that we mentioned. We call it Play Date, and now we're going on the road. This is actually our 3rd trip to the city for.
Yeah. So this is what I wanted to jump to.
Okay, great. I'm glad I led you to it.
So you mentioned before that you go to hundreds of plays a year, and then you're teaching acting classes, you're directing productions. I mean, what does, say, a typical month look for you in terms of these are the amount of days I spend traveling to shows and doing the research and sharing with my students and then working on projects in a local, this is just, it seems like a mountain of just, like you said, being mad about theater is really jumping into it head first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Today
Right.
I just came from designing flyers for my acting class. Is doing an evening of monologues, March 25th at Eden Cafe. So that was about an hour ago. I'm doing this interview with you this afternoon. I have to go home and pick some monologues, and then I'm going to Mousetrap with Homemade tonight.
Okay, great.
Tomorrow morning is my acting class, 10:30 to 1:30. Antoinette Lawson, Women with Voices, is at the Art Center at 3 o'clock. And then tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, Baltimore Waltz is at Skidmore College. And then Sunday, we're driving down to the city to see those two shows.
Wow.
I'm on break from rehearsal. Peter and the
Okay.
Starcatcher has a spring break. The kids are all gone home for the week, so I get to see a little bit more theater.
Yeah, that's a lot just in a few days. And then I'd love to talk too about your production, Peter and the
Yeah.
Starcatcher. How did you, have you been working with Sienna for very long?
No, Dr. Krista Dennis asked me in my interest in Peter and the Starcatcher. Dr. Krista Dennis is another individual in how Capital Region Theater has changed. She's involved with community groups. She directed Little Foxes for Northeast Theater Ensemble. She has made Sienna available as far as space, as far as props, costumes, things like that. Space as far as performing companies coming in and Sienna hosting them. Black Theater Troupe of Upstate New York just finished Fences. Consortium Theater uses it in the summer. This summer they're doing See How They Run, or no, Catch Me If You Can. And there are other groups. I needed rehearsal space for my production last summer of Men on Boats, and I approached Krista, and we got to use a classroom during the summer while that we presented the show at Sand Lake. So Krista is the connection, and that's how I got into Sienna, my first directing job at one of the colleges, which is amazing.
Yeah. How has production been so far with your team and everything?
Oh, it's fantastic. I'm Men on Boats. I bought like 8 oars at Walmart for I think they were like $9 each, and that was my set.
Yeah.
And I've got a design team. I've got a lighting designer, set designer, technical director, costume designer. I've got a stage manager, an assistant stage manager, assistant director. I mean,
it's a big jump.
Yeah. I've got a staff of 40 from Men on Boats, which was me and a stage manager, and
right. You're like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah. And seriously, 12 women with oars. But so it's and working with the students, which is a different, environment.
Yeah.
They all have papers, they all have things.
Right.
There are evening classes. So the rehearsal schedule has been
challenging.
has been shifting and things like that. And the show itself I've seen it 3.5 times. One of them was a video production, which I just watched half of. I don't walk out of shows. But the show itself is sort of a devised piece of theater in that it encourages you to make whatever you want of the items. It's a prequel to Peter Pan, and it tells how Peter came to fly, where Tinkerbell came from, Captain Hook, and all of these things. It's sort of a backstory on that. It's based on a young adult novel by Dave Barry and Ridley Pearson. And the original production was done by Roger Rees of Nicholas Nickleby fame of the 1980s, and Alex Timbers, who directed the production of Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson and rocky, but it was developed in workshop productions in that this is an adventure story. It takes place on ships in the first act and on an island in the second act, and they made everything. So there are ships capsizing, there are people thrown overboard, people fly. And all of this stuff was done with a pour theater method. In we don't have rigging. We don't, even though we could afford it. So, it's all done with lifting people up and using implements to create what we're doing. So every day in rehearsal has been like a playground. How could we make the sound of a ship creaking?
Yeah.
And let's
Figuring
try this
it out.
and let's try that.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And if people want to see the play, when is it starting?
It's March 14th through the 17th and March 21st through the 23rd.
Awesome.
Thursday through Saturday nights at 8, Sunday at 2.
That's great.
Yeah.
And if people have like a limited exposure to theater, what kind of plays, is this kind of a play that you would suggest to them, like this is a good start? Or
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone, everyone knows Peter Pan.
Yeah.
And so they're going to have plenty of background information on this. And it's very accessible as far as, it's very presentational. The story is told out to the audience. The audience surrounds the action.
Yeah.
And they're a part of it. Actually, they are very much a part of it.
Yeah.
I've included them in the action. They actually make sound effects, so the audience is needed.
Yeah.
I think it's a great way to
jump right in.
Yeah.
Do you have any other local theater recommendations for the next few weeks, or even a little out of town?
Yeah, I'm dying to see. I love this play. Albany is doing Our Country's Good, and it's for one weekend. I'm going to screw up the dates. I think it's March. It's the second weekend of March. So March 7th through 10th, I think. Yeah. It's a great play. It's about the founding of Australia as a penal colony with the British soldiers and the convicts, and they were starving when they got there. There were no provisions. The HMS Bounty, Mutiny on the Bounty, did not reach them. And so to distract and to build a community atmosphere, they put on a play of the recruiting officer, and it's the convicts and the British Army putting on a play together to build a country.
That's so
yeah. It's
what a story to tell.
Great play, and all the actors, at least when I did it, and I'm pretty sure they're doing it too, are double cast, so they play convicts and army. Yeah.
There's so many tiny moving parts of a play that can be just like, even that in itself is so interesting. Aside from the story, it's so many things that you can do in the background of it, I guess.
Yeah, in really the telling of it,
right?
And how you choose to frame it.
And it can be different every time. It's just interesting. Awesome. It's great. Well,
I've sold a ticket, haven't I?
I'm going to make it happen.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wealth of knowledge in local theater.
Thank you.
Appreciate having you.
Thank you for the forum and the collaborative to keep spreading the word, the gospel.
The gospel of art.
That's right.
Oh, man.
All praise.